My retirement dinner was supposed to be simple, just family, old coworkers, and a quiet evening at the restaurant downtown. But while walking toward the restroom, I passed a table near the entrance covered with printed seating charts. And that was the moment I realized my own family had planned the evening very differently than I imagined. I stopped walking. At first, I thought maybe I was reading it wrong. My eyes aren't what they used to be. 74 years old and too stubborn to wear my glasses unless I'm driving. But no, I saw my name plain as day. Harold Bennett, table 6, way in the back corner, beside two retired supervisors I barely knew, and my cousin Earl, who nobody in the family even liked. I kept staring at the chart, because something felt off in my stomach. My wife Carol was at table 1. My son Daniel and his wife Melissa were there too. My daughter Gina and her husband sat there. Even my grandson Tyler's girlfriend had a seat at the front, but not me. The guest of honor was sitting alone in the shadows near the kitchen doors. I heard silverware clinking inside the banquet room, laughter, glasses tapping together, somebody testing a microphone. Then I noticed another thing. At table 1, there was an empty seat beside my wife. The card on the table read, Mr. Richard Holloway. I just stood there staring at that name, Richard Holloway. I knew that name. Hell, I knew it too well. Carol worked with him 15 years ago at the insurance office over in Akron. Tall guy, slick hair, always smiling too hard. I met him twice at company Christmas parties back then. Carol told me years ago they lost touch. So why was he at my retirement dinner? And why was he sitting at the family table while I got shoved near the bathrooms like an afterthought? I heard footsteps behind me. It was Melissa carrying a tray of cupcakes. The second she saw me standing there looking at the chart, her face changed. Oh, Harold, you weren't supposed to see that yet. Yet. That word hit me harder than it should have. I looked at her. Supposed to? She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's just, Gina handled the seating thing. Everybody's moving around still. I pointed toward the chart. Who's Richard Holloway? Her smile disappeared completely. For about 2 seconds, she looked scared. Real scared. Then she recovered fast. Too fast. Just an old family friend, she said quietly. I nodded slow like I believed her, but inside, something cold moved through my chest. Because families don't accidentally seat old friends beside your wife at your own retirement dinner. Not unless something's already broken. Melissa stepped closer and lowered her voice. Harold, maybe don't make tonight difficult. That sentence told me everything. Not what was happening, but that everybody else already knew. I looked through the banquet room doors again. Carol was laughing at something Daniel said. She looked relaxed, comfortable, too comfortable, like she wasn't worried about me finding out a damn thing. Then the front entrance opened behind me, and when I turned around, Richard Holloway walked in, wearing a dark gray suit and carrying a gift bag with both hands. And the first thing he said when he saw me standing there was, Harold, I was hoping we could do this privately first. Richard stopped a few feet in front of me. Up close, he looked older than I remembered. Thinner too, gray around the temples, but he still had that same polished look about him. The kind of man who always seemed freshly shaved and slightly smug. He held the gift bag awkwardly in both hands, like he suddenly regretted bringing it. I stared at him for a long moment before speaking. Privately, I said. His eyes shifted toward the banquet room doors behind me. Please. Melissa quietly disappeared without another word. That alone told me this wasn't some surprise reunion Carol forgot to mention. This was planned. I crossed my arms. You got about 30 seconds before I start asking questions in there instead. Richard swallowed hard. I know this looks bad. Then maybe explain why my wife's sitting beside you at my retirement dinner. He rubbed the back of his neck. Nervous. Real nervous. Carol invited me. There it was. Simple sentence. But it felt like somebody slowly pushing a knife into my ribs. Not because of jealousy exactly. At my age, things aren't dramatic like in the movies. It's quieter than that. Heavier. You start replaying years in your head. Long silences. Separate vacations. Your wife suddenly locking her phone after 30 years of leaving it face up on the kitchen counter. Richard lowered his voice even more. She said tonight was the right time. For what? He looked sick standing there. Then he said something that made my stomach completely turn over. She thought you already knew. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes when old men get hurt bad enough, we laugh first so we don't collapse in public. Knew what? Before he could answer, Carol's voice came from behind the banquet room doors. There you are. She walked toward us, smiling, but the smile disappeared the second she saw our faces. I watched her eyes move between me and Richard. Panic, tiny, fast. But I saw it. 38 years of marriage teaches you every expression a person has. Carol stopped walking. Nobody spoke for a second. Finally she sighed. Not guilty, not ashamed, just annoyed, like I'd complicated something. Harold, she said quietly, can we not do this here? That sentence hit harder than anything else. Not denial, not confusion, not what are you talking about? Just, can we not do this here? I looked at Richard. How long? Carol closed her eyes immediately, and Richard looked down at the floor. That was my answer. My chest tightened so hard, I thought for a second I might actually hit the ground right there beside the seating chart table. I leaned against the wall. Carol stepped forward fast. Harold! I pulled away from her hand. That hurt her. I could see it. Good. You invited him, I said. It's complicated. No, I said. It really ain't. People inside the banquet room were starting to notice something was wrong. Faces turned toward the doorway. My grandson Tyler actually stood up halfway from his seat, trying to see. Carol lowered her voice. We were going to tell you after dinner. After dinner. Like this was dessert and coffee conversation. Like maybe after the cheesecake, they were all going to explain my own marriage to me. I looked past her into the room. Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. Gina looked pale as a ghost. Even Earl looked uncomfortable. And Earl once got drunk at Thanksgiving and punched a television. They all knew. Every damn one of them. And suddenly, that seating chart made perfect sense. Table 6 wasn't random. They didn't want me near Richard, near Carol, near the speeches, near whatever ugly little performance they'd planned for the evening. I looked back at my wife. How long? I asked again. This time she answered. 8 years. I honestly don't remember breathing after that. 8 years. 8 years while I worked 60-hour weeks at the machine plant. 8 years while I paid for Tyler's college tuition. 8 years while I sat beside her in church every Sunday, like some fool everybody pitied behind his back. Richard stepped forward. Harold, I never wanted... I shoved the gift bag out of his hand so hard it hit the floor and something glass shattered inside it. The whole banquet room went silent. And then my daughter Gina suddenly stood up from table 1 with tears running down her face and shouted, Mom, just tell him the rest before somebody else does. Nobody moved after Gina yelled that. The room went dead quiet, except for some poor waitress near the bar, dropping a fork onto a plate. I turned slowly toward my daughter. She looked terrified the second the words left her mouth, like she'd been holding them in for weeks and finally cracked. Carol snapped at her immediately. Gina, enough. No, Gina said, shaking her head hard. No, I'm tired of this. Daniel stood up fast. Jesus Christ, Gina. She deserves to know. I looked around the room again. Nobody looked shocked. That was the part that burned worst. Not one surprised face, just fear. Fear because the secret finally broke open. I looked back at Carol. "The rest?" I said quietly. "What rest?" Carol pressed her lips together tight. Her hands were shaking now. Richard looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Then Daniel walked toward me with both palms out like I was some unstable old man about to lose control. "Dad, maybe we should sit down somewhere private." I almost laughed again. Private. Everybody suddenly loved privacy after humiliating me in public. I pointed toward the tables. "Who else knows?" Nobody answered. That was answer enough. I looked at Tyler. My grandson couldn't even look me in the eye. The kid looked sick. Then Earl muttered under his breath, "Hell of a way to do this." Carol whipped around toward him. "Stay out of it." And Earl, drunk or not, said the one honest thing anybody had said all night. Should have told him years ago. Years, plural. My heart started pounding so hard my ears rang. I looked back at Carol. "Tell me." She sat down slowly at the nearest table like her legs gave out. And then she said it. "Daniel isn't your biological son." I heard somebody gasp behind me. Maybe Melissa. Maybe me. I honestly don't know. For a second, the whole room tilted sideways. Daniel started talking immediately. "Dad, listen to me. Please, it doesn't change anything." I couldn't even hear him. All I saw was Carol sitting there crying into her hands while Richard stared at the carpet like a coward. My mind went backward, 48 years in about 3 seconds. Daniel being born early during that awful snowstorm. Holding him in St. Vincent Hospital. Teaching him how to shave. Paying for braces. Little league games. College tuition. Helping him buy his first damn car. I raised that boy. I buried my back in factories for that boy. And everybody at table 1 knew before I did. I looked at Richard. "You're his father?" He nodded once. Tiny movement. Barely anything. But it split my life clean in half. Daniel stepped closer. "Dad, he was never around. You're my father. You are." I backed away from him so fast he stopped cold. That hurt him. Good. Because I was hurting in ways I didn't even have names for anymore. Carol stood up crying now. "Harold, please understand. It happened before we got married. I found out after I was already pregnant. You lied to me for almost 50 years. I was scared, so you let me build my whole damn life on a lie?" People around us were staring openly now. Old coworkers, cousins. My former supervisor, Frank, looked horrified. And suddenly I understood the dinner, the speeches, the seating chart. Richard being here, this wasn't retirement. This was confession. Organized, planned, managed. They wanted to tell me surrounded by witnesses so I wouldn't explode. I looked at Gina. "You knew too?" She started sobbing immediately. "Mom told me 5 years ago." 5 years. I turned toward Daniel again. "And you?" Silence. That silence almost killed me. He knew too. I could actually feel something inside me shutting down. Not anger anymore. Something colder. Something final. Tyler suddenly stood up from his chair. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Grandpa, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't." I looked at him. Only him. Only one face in that room that still looked honest. Then Carol said the one thing she should have taken to her grave. "We were trying to protect you." And I looked at my wife of 38 years and realized she still thought I was the weak one in the room. I don't remember deciding to leave. 1 second, I was standing there staring at Carol, and the next, I was walking toward the exit while 50 people sat frozen behind me. Nobody stopped me at first. I think they were relieved, like they'd prepared for yelling, maybe crying, maybe me throwing a punch at Richard. but I was too empty for that. I reached the front doors when Daniel finally caught up behind me. "Dad, wait." I kept walking. The parking lot outside was cold and damp from rain earlier that evening. Streetlights reflected off the black pavement. My old Buick sat near the curb under a flickering lamp. "Dad, please." I turned around then. Daniel looked pale, sweating, like he might actually collapse, and for one terrible second, I still saw my little boy. That almost destroyed me worse than the lie itself. "You knew," I said. Tears rolled down his face immediately. "Mom told me 3 years ago." 3 years. 3 whole years, shaking my hand at Christmas, calling me dad on birthdays, helping me after my knee surgery. 3 years watching me live inside a joke everybody else understood. I didn't know how to tell you. "You could have started with the truth." He cried harder. "You are my father." "No," I said quietly. "I'm the man who paid for everything." That hit him hard. Good, because nobody there understood what they'd really stolen from me yet. It wasn't just marriage or trust, it was memory. Every happy moment I had with my family suddenly felt poisoned. Daniel stepped closer. "He never raised me. He never loved me. You did." I looked past him through the restaurant windows. Carol was standing inside near the entrance crying while Gina held her arm. And Richard stayed hidden in the back, coward to the end. I looked back at Daniel. Was tonight his idea? No. Then whose? Silence again. That told me enough. Carol planned this. My wife carefully arranged a retirement dinner so she could finally unload 50 years of guilt onto me after I finished working and paying for everyone else's lives. I laughed once under my breath. Not happy, just tired. "You know what hurts most?" I asked him. Daniel wiped his face. "Dad, no, listen." My voice cracked then. First time all night. "I would have died for you." He started crying so hard he had to cover his mouth. And suddenly I hated myself for saying it because despite everything, I meant it. That was the cruelest part. Love doesn't disappear just because truth shows up late. I opened my car door. Then I heard heels hitting pavement behind us. Carol. She came rushing out without a coat, mascara running down her cheeks. "Harold, don't leave like this." I stared at her across the roof of my car. "How should I leave?" She looked shattered now, older, smaller. "Good. You think I wanted this?" she asked. I almost couldn't believe the nerve of that sentence. "You had 38 years to stop wanting it." Richard appeared in the restaurant doorway behind her but didn't come closer, still hiding, still letting her take the damage. Carol shook her head desperately. "I loved you." I said nothing, because maybe she did. That's what made this whole thing uglier. People think betrayal always comes from hate. Sometimes it comes from cowardice, from convenience, from somebody loving you just enough to keep using you. Carol stepped closer to the car. "I was 19, she whispered. "I was pregnant and terrified. Richard didn't want a family back then. You did." Every word out of her mouth felt like another nail sliding into my chest. "You let me believe he was mine. I convinced myself biology didn't matter. But it mattered tonight." She froze, and there it was, the truth underneath all of it. This dinner wasn't about honesty. It was about Richard, about age, about regrets, about unfinished business. I looked toward the restaurant again and finally noticed something I'd missed before. At the front table beside Carol's purse, there was another seating card. Not for me, for Richard, and underneath his name, written in gold script, were the words, "Family." I couldn't stop staring at that word, family, under Richard's name, not mine, his. The rain had started again outside, light at first, tiny drops tapping the roof of my Buick while the parking lot sat almost empty around us. Carol followed my eyes back toward the table inside. Then she realized I'd seen the card. Her face drained white. "Harold," I looked at her slowly. "When were you planning to replace me officially?" I asked. "That's not fair." I actually smiled then, not because anything was funny, because after a certain amount of pain, a man's body doesn't know what expression to use anymore. "Fair?" I said. "Carol, you introduced another man as family at my retirement dinner. It wasn't like that? Then tell me what it was like." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Behind her, Daniel looked completely broken now. Gina was crying into Melissa's shoulder near the doorway. Tyler stood off by himself under the awning, looking sick to his stomach. But Richard finally stepped forward. "Big mistake." "Harold," he said quietly, "you deserve the whole truth." I stared at him. "You got 1 minute." Carol shook her head immediately. "Richard, don't." He ignored her, and suddenly I realized something. This wasn't the first time they'd had this argument. Richard looked at me with tired eyes. "The reason Carol wanted tonight," he swallowed hard, "is because she's sick." Everything went still again. Even the rain sounded farther away. I looked at Carol. She started crying harder immediately. "What?" Daniel covered his face with one hand. Gina whispered, "Mom." Carol wouldn't look at me. Richard answered instead. "Pancreatic cancer." My knees almost gave out. No, not because I forgave her, not because the betrayal vanished, but because life is cruel enough to stack grief on top of humiliation until you can't separate them anymore. Carol finally looked up at me. "They found it in February." February. 8 months. 8 months sitting beside me on the couch pretending everything was normal. 8 months of doctor appointments, whispers, phone calls, secrets. I felt sick. "You were dying," I whispered. "I am dying." Nobody moved. Cars passed on the street nearby, throwing reflections across the wet pavement, while my entire life collapsed in slow motion beside a steakhouse in Dayton, Ohio. Then Richard spoke again. "The treatment stopped working last month." I closed my eyes. God help me. Part of me still wanted to hold her. That's the ugly truth nobody tells you about old marriages. You can hate somebody and still ache for them at the exact same time. Carol stepped closer carefully. "I didn't want you finding out about Daniel after I was gone. So instead you humiliated me in front of everybody while I was alive?" Tears rolled down her face. "I thought if everyone was there, maybe you wouldn't leave." That sentence hollowed me out completely. Not because it was loving, because it was selfish. Even now, after everything, she was still trying to manage my reaction instead of facing it honestly. I looked at Daniel. "Did you know about the cancer too?" He nodded slowly. "That hurt almost worse than the affair. Because my son, maybe not by blood, but by life, had spent months lying to my face while helping plan this nightmare." Then Tyler suddenly spoke from behind us. His voice shook. "You people are unbelievable." Everybody turned toward him. He looked furious, really furious. At 19 years old, he was the only one standing there, acting like the truth still mattered. "She's dying, and you all decided to destroy Grandpa at the same time?" he snapped. "Tyler," Daniel warned. "No." He pointed toward the restaurant. "You made seating charts? Speeches? What the hell is wrong with you people?" Nobody answered him, because there wasn't an answer. Then Tyler looked at me, and what he said next hit harder than anything else that night. "You're the only real man in this family, Grandpa." Daniel flinched like he'd been slapped, and Carol finally started sobbing for real, the kind with no control left in it. Then she looked at me one last time and whispered, There's one more thing I never told you about Richard. Carol wiped her face with shaking hands. Rainwater and mascara ran together down her cheeks while everybody stood frozen around us in the parking lot. I stared at her. What now? She looked toward Richard first. That told me I wasn't gonna like whatever came next. Then she whispered it. Richard isn't the only reason Daniel might not be yours. For a second, nobody even breathed. Daniel looked confused. Mom, what are you talking about? But Carol just kept crying. The kind that comes from somebody finally running out of lies to hide behind. I felt cold all over. Not angry anymore, just numb. What does that mean? I asked. She covered her mouth with one hand. There was someone else before Richard. Gina actually gasped. Daniel stepped backward like he'd been hit. Richard closed his eyes slowly, like he already knew. And suddenly I realized this whole thing was even uglier than I imagined. This wasn't one secret. This was a lifetime built out of them. Carol looked at Daniel. You were never Richard's biologically either. Daniel stared at her in horror. What? You were supposed to be Harold's, she cried. I wanted you to be. The rain came down harder then. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I looked at Richard. You knew? He nodded once. Since 1998. I laughed again. God, that awful broken laugh. So the two of you dragged me into this circus tonight and you still don't even know whose son he is? Daniel looked sick. Tyler grabbed his arm to steady him. Carol stepped toward me desperately. I loved you, Harold. I swear to God I loved you. But all I could think about was every Christmas photo hanging in my hallway. Every birthday cake. Every overtime shift. Every night I came home exhausted and kissed her forehead while she looked me dead in the eye carrying all this rot inside her. Then Daniel suddenly broke. Not crying, not yelling, breaking. You let me hate him for years, he whispered to Richard. Nobody answered. Daniel looked at Carol next. And you let me lie to him. Carol collapsed onto her knees right there in the rain. I was trying to hold the family together. No, Tyler said quietly. Everybody looked at him. The kid's face was pale with rage. You were trying to hold your lies together. Silence, just rain, just headlights from the road, just 50 years of poison finally sitting in the open air where everybody could smell it. Then Daniel looked at me, not Richard, me. His voice cracked apart. Dad, I saw him standing there at 6 years old holding a baseball glove bigger than his chest. At 12, learning how to drive my old pickup. At 21, hugging me after college graduation. My son. Maybe, maybe not. I couldn't even tell anymore. And suddenly I realized something truly horrible. The DNA didn't matter now. The damage did. I looked at Carol one last time, kneeling in the rain. Then I looked at the restaurant windows behind her. Inside, through the glass, I could still see the seating chart sitting near the entrance. Table 1, family. Table 6, Harold Bennett. Alone. I got into my car without another word. Behind me, I heard Carol screaming my name through the rain. And for the first time in 38 years, I drove away from my family while they were still begging me to stay. If this story hit you hard, let me know in the comments what you would have done in his place. And if you believe family, trust, and dignity still matter, subscribe for more real emotional stories like this one.